Hey, what is happening, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Super excited about this conversation today because for what feels like the 10th time in a row on all the last videos on Rule of Two Review, I'm going to discuss Star Wars and Star Wars within the realm of video games because, as I've said a couple of times, it's the time for Star Wars. It's now been 2.5, almost 3 weeks, I think, since Episode 7, The Force Awakens, has come out. It's a super huge deal. It's the greatest thing in the world. Having Star Wars back just feels so freaking awesome. That's pretty much why I can't shut up and stop talking about it. So with that, and with the release of Star Wars Battlefront just a month before in November, and all of the hype and the hubbub and the positive reviews and the negative feedback and all the different things happening with Battlefront, I wanted to take this time and further discuss what's going on with Electronic Arts and their 10 years of licensing rights they own for Star Wars video games. Okay, so you've heard me talk about this many times on my recent Star Wars videos where I've had to bring this up. Just a quick reminder that it was announced not too long after Disney shut down LucasArts after acquiring Lucasfilm from George Lucas. Once they did that Electronic Arts ended up picking up 10 years of licensing rights for Star Wars video games. So for the next 10 years, although I guess at this point it was probably 2013 when that happened, and it's 2016 now. So for the next 7.5 years, we know that Electronic Arts is the only company that can either develop or publish any Star Wars video game. That has first turned into Star Wars Battlefront, which was going to be Star Wars Battlefront 3 a couple of years ago, which is very, very different than Star Wars Battlefront, quote-unquote, the game that did just come out a couple of months ago in November. With Star Wars Battlefront that just released, it's not a typical traditional Battlefront game. As you've heard me say, I do love the game. There are some issues with it, and I understand the controversies with the season pass and all that stuff, and I don't like how a lot of that's playing out. But as far as just a game and just a Star Wars game, it's freaking awesome. I love it. I've been playing it today. You're watching footage of it right now. It feels like Star Wars. So they released this game, which is more meant to tie in with the feel of the what was then upcoming Episode 7 with Force Awakens, the new trilogy. It's a sequel to the original trilogy, so they tried to make this new game canon, which means it takes place during the original trilogy, and that kind of limits the amount of content that they're really able to include in the game. As far as what they've achieved mimicking the original trilogy, they've obviously done fantastic. It's pretty much why I love that game. It just shines above the rest as far as making that, the world of Star Wars feel like that's what you're living in, and that's just so awesome. So that's been the first game that they've officially released. Very high profile. It's been extremely successful. And now we start to turn to what is going to happen next, or at least I'm turning to that. Kind of the disappointing thing I've been noticing is really no one in the industry is kind of talking about what's supposed to be happening with Star Wars video games going forward. I think everyone was so focused on just Episode 7, the movie, the next Star Wars movie, the sequel to Return of the Jedi, here's the movie, and then we're so focused on Battlefront, Star Wars Battlefront. They revived Battlefront, they turned it into something else. EA's making this game. Is it going to be as good as it looked? It's finally out. Some people love it, some people hate it. Everyone's been so focused on those two things and no one's really thinking about the future properly, I don't think, at least. And that's what I want to discuss because, yes, I love Battlefront. I think that the Battlefront 3 that we were going to get before would have been the better game, but still the Battlefront they released, I do really, really enjoy. But what is going to happen next? EA, you've now completed Star Wars Battlefront. You're obviously working on gouging the consumer with $50 worth of DLC in the next couple of months to a year, which is a lot of stuff that, granted, probably should have been in the game already, but it isn't, and that is what it is. But now that you're done with Battlefront, you need to start letting us know what's going to happen next. I really, really hope that this year, throughout the year, or during E3, Electronic Arts gives us an idea of what else they're doing with Star Wars licensing. I don't want you to just gouge us and make one pretty good game and then a bunch of other DLC to complete that game and try to get twice the money out of gamers. You need to move on from that. There's more than just the original trilogy to discuss. There's the new trilogy. There's a prequel trilogy. I mean, shit, if we need to go back to the Old Republic time for the umpteenth time, even do that. Even though the previously established Old Republic stuff we had seen is now technically no longer canon, but they could still kind of cherry pick different ideas from the previous canon, which they've been doing. Even in Episode 7, they've done that. They can kind of continue to cherry pick that stuff and still do some things. ultimately what I want is I want a lot of prequel content to start filling in the video game kind of Star Wars world, because as you've probably also heard me say, I do absolutely love the prequels. I know that those are far more divisive. Everyone loves the original trilogy. You know, a lot of people love the prequels, but there's obviously a large contingent of people who don't love the prequels, and that's fine. I happen to love them, and I think that some of the expanded material that has been created around the prequel era, which includes the Clone Wars, and some of the greatest video games that we've even seen, or even the older Battlefront games, those all include or are surrounding the prequel era, and I think that stuff is great. So there's a huge opportunity for EA to start doing stuff with more than just the original trilogy. Like, I know it's the one thing that all the Star Wars fans can just, like, totally just devour over and over again. No one gets sick of the original trilogy. They'll complain about the prequels, and then they'll complain about Episode 7, like people have been doing, and probably the other new sequels. And everyone just always loves the original trilogy, which, granted, is like the best trilogy ever made. Absolutely, it's my favorite thing in the world. But there's so much goodness around it. There's a lot that the prequels can add. There's a lot that the new trilogy is going to be able to add. Maybe you can bring back some elements of what the new Jedi Order was in the old expanded universe. And there's so much going on there. I just need to know. We need to know, and we deserve to know, EA, what you're going to be doing with Star Wars going forward. You know, like I said, the previous Battlefront games were so great because they really had a no-holds-barred, anything-goes kind of attitude. It was like all the characters from all the 6 films, all the locations from all the 6 films, some of the other expanded stuff that hadn't shown up in the movies, all that stuff existed in one game, where you can be playing on Bespin, but you're going to have a Naboo starfighter flying around, and you're going to be playing as Darth Maul, and someone else is going to be Boba Fett or Yoda. And so it's like all these things, it wasn't canon. Like, they didn't try to make it canon, like part of the frickin' story, which for most Star Wars games I think is important. For Battlefront, it's not important. You're supposed to just take everything that makes Star Wars great and put it into the game. With how great Battlefront is, with the original trilogy look and feel, just how that game looks and sounds, and how it is mimicking the original trilogy, it is so spot on perfect. I just get goosebumps thinking about what they could do if they did include the prequel era, the Clone Wars era, Episode 7 stuff. Why can't we put Kylo Ren or Rey in there? Why can't we have some of these great things? An older Han Solo, for example. Maybe both the old and young Obi-Wan Kenobi. Like, there's so many things that they can do there, and EA has routinely and consistently said that they are only focusing on the original trilogy, even with the DLC for Battlefront, because luckily there's a lot of people asking for prequel stuff and Episode 7 stuff. And I think that's been great. I've asked several times on Twitter and Facebook posts, and they basically say we're only focusing on Episodes 4, 5, and 6 for this, like, the end. And that's just disappointing, man. I'm sure it's all going to be cool, and again, the game is great, but more needs to happen. When you look at the last generation, we were so hosed with Star Wars games because we really actually only got Force Unleashes 1 and 2, which I think were super not good, very disappointing, did not live up to the potential. And I think we deserve a great action Star Wars game set in any different aspect of the canon and the universe. I think that we deserve a good RPG, like a Knights of the Old Republic kind of thing. Maybe even another first-person shooter like the Republic Commando. There's so many great things you can do there. Vehicle-based combat like the Rogue Squadron or the old Clone Wars games. Star Wars is rife for the picking, and EA, you've been handed such an amazing bone being able to create, the only company able to create Star Wars games, and you need to get to it. We know about the old, there was the Darth Maul game that was going to be coming out for the Wii U early in its life that got canceled. Recent rumors that might be coming back soon is very, very exciting. Hopefully they make it the right kind of game. I want them to include all these different things. So I don't know, that's kind of just really what I wanted to talk about. Is I'm so excited about Star Wars right now because Episode 7 was so fantastic. Battlefront, as I've said several times, is a great game. I just want them to expand on that. They need to show us they're making more than just these multiplayer-only, downloadable content, expanding, gouging for the dollar types of experiences. Like, if you do that once, whatever. Battlefront is at least still a fun game, so I might let that slide for now. But we really need to understand that they're doing a lot more. I mean, look at some of the best Star Wars games in history, like the old Super Star Wars and Super Return of the Jedi, the Pod Racer games, Knights of the Old Republic. There's been so many different kinds of Star Wars games over the years. The X-Wing versus TIE Fighter stuff on the old PC back in the day in the 90s. I mean, those are the kinds of things that we need included in our Star Wars gaming life. We can't just have Battlefront and a bunch of extra paid DLC for the next 5 years. You know, you can't do that, EA. We want, we demand, and we deserve, as Star Wars fans and as gamers, to have a lot more coming from the Star Wars video game world than just Battlefront. And if anything, what you really should be doing, even though you've effectively confirmed that you won't be doing this, but what you should be doing is, with the DLC, you should at least be giving us more of this content. Add space battles, add prequel content. I want to play as freaking Darth Maul and Count Dooku, and, you know, I'd like to play as Kylo Ren, or Rey, or Poe. Like, there's so much going on there, and you need to take advantage of it. So, that's kind of my little, I guess, pseudo-rant. I mean, you can tell I'm very heated, because I just really believe in this, and I think that with these current machines, we could be getting so many great Star Wars games, you guys. I really want to see, I mean, as a huge prequel lover, that's the number one thing I think we're missing so far. I know we're going off of only one game from them so far, so we need to give EA a couple of chances very, very soon to announce new Star Wars games and show us what else they're doing besides Battlefront, and show us what other eras of the timeline and different films and trilogies that they're willing to cover in these games. So I do have to kind of give them at least a little bit of time. But as of right now, where we're kind of waiting in the wings to see what happens, I would like to see very specifically some prequel stuff included. I want a game set around the Clone Wars. I want to be able to play as Anakin. You know, Anakin is my favorite all-time Star Wars character. I want to touch on some of the expanded stuff. You know, Asajj Ventress is my like second or third favorite Star Wars character. Bring her into a game. Give us a Kinlan Voss story. Like, there's a lot of great lore that happened during that prequel era, and that was the greatest thing about the prequels, is they expanded the Star Wars universe lore like 20-fold. It's crazy how much more we started to understand about the galaxy and the way the world of Star Wars really worked with the advent of the prequels, what the Jedi Council and the Jedi Order was really like in its prime before it fell apart with the Empire. Why did Anakin turn to the dark side? How did it set up the events of 4, 5, and 6? And a lot of that even connects still to Episode 7. I really want a clone army game too. Like, I love playing as stormtroopers, but I want to play as clone troopers too. So now I'm just getting long in the tooth about a very simple idea, which is that we just need to know what else EA is doing with Star Wars. Are you going to add better content to the DLC and actually make it worth our dollar for Battlefront? Are you going to show us what other games and genres of gaming that you're going to work with? Are you going to show us what other films and trilogies you're going to be willing to work with? Are you going to work within some of the newly established kind of expanded universe that hasn't really been talked about yet? There's a lot going on there, and like I said, we demand and we deserve to have better and more Star Wars games than just Star Wars Battlefront. So E3, you know, it's January 3rd, the day that I'm recording this, so E3 is 6 months away. By E3, EA has to have more Star Wars stuff to talk to us about on their stage conference, because, you know, they do have a stage conference every year at E3, and that makes me really excited, because I think this is going to have to be the year where they talk about the future of Star Wars within EA. I also really hope that when their 10 years is up, that, I don't know, something different needs to happen with the Star Wars license. I don't quite know what, but, you know, I don't mind EA continuing to make some games. I think that they could be great. I think Visceral would be an amazing studio to make a game. Star Wars 1313, I'm glad I remembered this. That was another game everyone was excited for. It got canceled. That was total bullshit. But very recently, Kathleen Kennedy of Lucasfilm said that that is something that they're looking at resurrecting. I made a video about that recently, too. I'll post it below for you guys to check out if you haven't seen it. And that's another great opportunity. You bring that game back, holy smokes. Those are the kinds of Star Wars games that we deserve. EA, bring us that shit. Those are the games we are looking for, basically. And so hopefully at E3 they talk about those kinds of games. What else are they doing? If they use E3 to only talk about Battlefront and the DLC, and if they only show DLC that is, again, just the basic original trilogy content, nothing else added, nothing from Episode 7, nothing from the prequels, I'm going to lose my shit. I will be like, EA, you motherfuckers. So I'm going to hope that that doesn't happen. It is still a little bit too early to tell for sure. I don't know really if I have enough faith in EA to do the right thing come E3 this year, but I need to at least give them time to either prove me right or prove me wrong. And so, yeah, like I said, long in the tooth, so I'm going to cut it off there. That's what's going on with Star Wars, EA, their licensing rights, what we may or may not see from EA and Star Wars video games in the future. Hopefully we get the right things coming up soon. It's really exciting to think about the right stuff coming out. So you guys tell me what you think about this. You know, are you fine with Battlefront as it is? Do you share the issues a lot of other people share? Do you think that we do need to hear more about what EA is going to be doing with Star Wars? What kind of Star Wars games would you guys like? Do you want to see more prequel and episode 7 content like I said? Do you want to see it in Battlefront or just as their own games? Do you want to see more expansion on the original trilogy stuff, which I admit would still be great too? I want kind of an all of the above sort of thing. Tell me what you guys think. What about Star Wars and video games actually excites you for the future? So that's pretty much it. Thanks for tuning in, guys, for yet another Star Wars related video. I know I'm shoving them down your guys' throats right now, so I appreciate you hanging on. But I mean, it's Star Wars. Who isn't excited about Star Wars right now? It's just the best time in the world. So that's all, you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. This, of course, is Robert Rule to Review, and I'll catch you guys next time on another video.